Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. We've got a really interesting one today, listener submitted actually, all about the world of online dating for seniors.
It's definitely a hot topic.
It is. And, we like to take these deep dives so we can get beyond just the surface level.
Absolutely peel back those layers.
Exactly. So to help us with that, we have an expert joining us today who can lend their insights. Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
So getting right into it, this blog post, Crazy Old Gringo, really doesn't beat around the bush. They start out by saying the chance of finding love after 60, if you just leave it up to chance, is 1 in 562.
Wow.
I know, right? Not great odds.
Yeah, that's pretty slim. Makes online dating seem a little less intimidating, maybe.
Yeah, maybe, if those are the alternatives. But it does beg the question, why are those odds so low?
Right. Well, the author digs into some studies on this and suggests it could be a combination of things, like evolutionary biology, for one.
Interesting. Okay, I'm listening.
It's basically saying men are often hardwired to seek out partners and women prioritize stability. These patterns stick around as we get older and can even get more pronounced.
Okay, so biology is part of it, but it's not the whole story.
Exactly. You've got societal norms, too. We're living longer. Family structures are different now than they used to be. All these factors play a role.
So it's kind of a perfect storm of sorts that leads to this low probability of finding love later in life.
You could say that.
Yeah.
Makes it all the more important to be, shall we say, proactive.
And that's where online dating comes in, right? This whole new world of possibilities opens up.
You got it. And it's interesting because the blog points out nearly half of Americans in their 50s and 60s are single. That's a huge demographic who might be looking at these online options.
It makes sense, though. I mean, you're connecting with people you might never have met otherwise. But I do have to say, whenever I hear about online dating, my mind always goes to the risks. Catfishing, for example, it's just terrifying to think someone could create this whole fake persona.
Yeah, it definitely preys on our desire to trust and connect. And the thing is, the internet makes it way too easy for those kinds of deceptions. But here's something interesting is you can actually use the internet to fight back a bit.
Oh, how so?
Reverse image searches. You can take a picture from a profile, upload it, and see if it's linked to other accounts or websites. It's pretty sophisticated now.
Wow, I did not know that. That's a good tip to keep in mind. That's really good to know, actually. But it's not always elaborate schemes like that, is it?
Right.
The blog also talks about seniors being targeted by predators and scammers.
Yeah, and that's the really heartbreaking part. These are people looking to exploit someone's vulnerability, which can be especially tough for seniors who might be dealing with things like loneliness, maybe the loss of a spouse, retirement.
Just this awful.
It is, and the scary thing is they can be so manipulative about it, playing on emotions, building trust, all for financial gain in the end.
It makes you realize how important digital literacy is. And not just for seniors, for everyone, really.
Absolutely. And the blog does a great job of highlighting that. It's not just about avoiding these worst-case scenarios. It's also about being aware of the emotional side of online dating in general. The constant swiping, the ghosting.
Oh, yeah, the ghosting.
It can do a number on your self-esteem,
Yeah.
especially if you're already feeling a little vulnerable.
It's true. You go online looking for connection, but then it's easy to get caught up in needing that validation from strangers.
Exactly. And you can start comparing yourself to others, feeling like you don't measure up. It can be a slippery slope.
And I imagine that's where the blog author's personal experiences come into play.
Definitely. They talk about falling into that trap of seeking validation online and how it can really impact your self-worth.
Which reminds me, they also emphasized setting healthy boundaries, just like you would in any relationship. But what does that even look like online?
That's the million-dollar question, right? It's about taking those traditional boundaries and adapting them to the digital world, like being upfront about your expectations, for example.
Okay, so like what you're looking for.
Exactly. A serious relationship, casual dating, just friends. Figure out what you want and make it clear from the start. And the other big one is pacing yourself. It's so easy to get caught up in the excitement of a new connection, but taking it slow is key. Online and offline.
Right, don't share too much too soon, protect yourself.
Exactly.
And that actually ties into another important point the blog made about online safety. Being careful about the personal information you share.
So important. Because the reality is your data is valuable, and not everyone out there has good intentions.
You mean like data breaches and things like that?
That's definitely part of it. But it's also just remembering that anything you post online can be really hard to erase completely. Think twice before you share sensitive info, whether it's on a dating profile or social media. Things like your address, your financial details, even your daily routine. You never know who might be looking.
It's a minefield out there. You're trying to put yourself out there, but then you also have to be so careful.
It is a balancing act for sure, but it's like any new relationship, you wouldn't just jump in blindly, right?
True, you want to get to know the person first.
Exactly. And it's the same principle online. It's just a different landscape.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to be informed. Know the risks. Know how to protect yourself. Knowledge is power.
I like that. Knowledge is armor. And speaking of which, the blog actually had some really good advice on that front. One thing they said that really resonated with me was trust your gut. If something feels off about a profile or an interaction, it probably is.
Intuition is huge. We can't underestimate that. Sometimes things just don't add up. Maybe there are inconsistencies in their story, or they're being evasive about answering questions. Those red flags are there for a reason.
So we've talked about the risks. We've talked about staying safe. There's one more thing I wanted to touch on from the blog: unrealistic expectations.
Ah, yes, the pitfalls of idealized profiles.
Exactly. And they made this really interesting point. They said, are you over 60, overweight, have wrinkles, perhaps not as attractive as when you were younger? Why then do you expect love?
It's blunt, but it makes you think.
It really does.
Yeah.
It's like we have this idea of what love should look like, who we should be to find it.
It's about coming to terms with who you are, imperfections and all. That's how you find real connection, the kind that lasts.
Which I think leads perfectly into what I found most insightful about this whole deep dive. It's not just about online dating, it's about self-worth. The blog author even mentioned this program they were doing, The Science of Well-Being, focused on positive psychology and building resilience.
It's so important, that focus on personal growth.
It's like they're saying, hey, instead of looking for happiness in a partner, find it within yourself first. Then the rest will follow.
Absolutely. True happiness comes from within. It's about your passions, your relationships, your own sense of self-worth. It shouldn't hinge on your relationship status.
It's a complete shift in perspective. I am whole and complete as I am. Any relationship is just a bonus.
Exactly. And that is a game changer.
Well said. It seems like we've covered a lot of ground here, from the very real risks of online dating to the power of self-love. It's a lot to unpack.
It is, but hopefully our listeners are walking away with some valuable insights.
I hope so too. Remember, everyone, knowledge is power. Be informed, be cautious, and most importantly, know that you are worthy of love and belonging just as you are. And on that note, that's a wrap on this deep dive. Until next time.